All right, ladies and gentlemen, Max is back. This is going to be a brief little session today. Mike's downstairs sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. And Jenny has just arrived home with little grandchild 2. And I left grandchild 2 up on the stool in front of the kitchen sink, playing with the dirty pots and pans. He's washing dishes. Dinner's in the oven. And in a few minutes, the food will be ready and I'll have to go downstairs. Okay, I didn't sleep at all last night. And toward dawn, there were thunderstorms in the area. There are still intermittent clouds and sun and occasional thunder, little rain, whatever. Okay, changing screens. Let me get right to this. I want to update this story. I think this is an important story. Many people were interested in it. There is an update to the Armenian Genocide story, the forgotten history that we did some work on. That information, of course, is still on the blog, some pages, some days back. This is dated August 3rd, 2016, and it's posted by someone, NC Scout. It came first with a tax and a set of laws. The Ottomans, seeking to further cement its iron fist from the Sultanate, fearing growing issues in Europe and desiring a means to motivate the growing social revolutionary youth class, found their savior in creating the long thorn in their side. The holdouts of a conquered culture, the remaining scaffolds of the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Eastern Roman Empire among the Armenian minority population. Islam had tolerated them through repression, but as the winds of change began to blow with a new generation, so did the attitude toward the dhimmi. Dhimmi is an Islamic word that we need to become familiar with and come to know and understand. Going on. Among the youthful Marxist-inspired revolutionary class, an unholy marriage of Marxism and Islam was created. The Young Turks, as they became known, sought solidarity throughout the Ottoman Empire. Dhimmis were thus not allowed to own any new property, and what property was owned could no longer sit on higher elevations than their Saracen counterparts. Okay, dhimmis. Dhimmis were the subjugated Armenians. They were not allowed to own any new property, and what property they did own could no longer sit on higher elevations than their Islamic counterparts. Ethnic schools began to be first heavily taxed, then put out of business. And those which refused were killed quietly. As word began to spread, awareness among the oppressed grew. But as the proverbial boiling pot analogy goes, there was little escape. The boiling pot analogy, that's the frogs that are in the hot water and do not realize in a timely manner that the water is getting hotter and begins to boil. There was little escape. By this time, in the second decade of the 20th century, among the meat grinder of World War I, a final solution to the cultural dilemma was realized, based upon the model created first in the progressive United States, and then in British South Africa with the Boers. The concentration and mechanized extermination of those who refused to submit. The Turkish model differed, however. Instead of the creation of camps, outright murder would prove a method more palatable. Prisoners of another minority class, the Kurds, were released and armed, told they'd be exonerated if they killed on behalf of the Ottoman, not unlike the Janissary of yore. Not unlike the Saracen Janissary of yore. I need to look up and find out what the history of this Saracen Janissary of yore is. And kill they did. Wanton murder became the norm. And the press created a sensation of this brutal gang running amok in the countryside, senselessly targeting the Christian minority. This would be time frame 2010. No, 1910. Time frame 1910. Under the auspices of protection, the Ottoman gendarme was invited into the holdout villages. They soon joined in the destruction as two pincers of a machine. Pictured above was often the result. And here's that photograph again. Crucified women and children in a profane offense to their religion, while the men were forced to watch and later executed. The Ottomans, like most things coming from the Islamic world, was brutish and incompetent. A good number escaped despite their best efforts. The much maligned Kurds of northern Iraq, some of which complicit in the genocide, also protected the fleeing Armenians and secured passage to other parts of the world. It is not there that this tale ends. Although the Ottoman Empire was broken and the remaining Armenians in the Far Eastern regions created a new nation and aligned with the Warsaw Pact for protection, this history is still being written today. While any Western school child can tell you anything about the Nazis' plan of World War II, none are taught anything about the models by which it was built upon, or the other populations which suffered under the boot of tyranny. They are not taught the propensity for violence inherent in both Islam and Marxism. Conversely, praise is offered along with derision for those cornerstones of Christianity which have moved mountains. Our president, that would be Obama, refused to acknowledge the genocide on its 100-year anniversary in 2015. A terribly significant act, but one which went unnoticed by a complicit press and a rabidly ignorant populace. A false coup in Turkey further cemented the power of a man seeking to recreate the glory days of the Ottoman Empire Caliphate, as he says as much. We have a generation of young Marxists who see little issue with Islam or the evil at its root, as long as it's profane to the righteous. It matters not by which means control is gained. To survive, the laissez-faire attitude of certain libertarians towards religion must end. Though controversial, this statement is irrefutably true through every historical example. Islam is utterly incompatible with the West and any free people. And Christianity is that which cements and galvanizes a culture. Look about the regions which currently see the greatest cultural siege and tell me this is not true. Although not an essay on dogma alone, this fact cannot be ignored. However, anyone refuting such should be thus. I seek to remind you who disagree that in the absence of a rooting or unifying culture, no movement can or will ever gain traction. The left has it. The right simply has reaction. This has been an incredibly difficult article to write. I buried my Armenian grandmother yesterday. This story was hers, of a people who history forgot, and at a time where those reigns seem to be reforming. She lived to see the coup of Erdogan, and despite her increasingly frail state, knew the larger plan at work. The faces may change, but the people do not. And might I remind you all, the groundwork here at home has already been laid. Don't say it can't happen. I will post this piece. I am moved. And sickened at the same time. All right, hold on. There is another piece that I also want to bring, but I can't do it right now. I will come back a little later today and continue with something more that I want to add. All right, later, Gator.